Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December 4th meeting of the City of Vista Planning Commission. Would you all please rise and join us in the pledge led by Commissioner Looney? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Salazar, roll call, please.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Rosler. All commissioners are present, including the student commissioners.
Very good. Welcome. Raise your hand tonight if you have a comment on any of the public hearings, please. All right? Very good. Commissioners, next item on the agenda are the minutes from our November 6th meeting. If there are no changes, can we hear a motion to approve? So moved. It's been moved, and do we have a second? Commissioner Kramer?
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes of November 6th. So cast your vote, please. Yes.
I was absent for the first part of this. Do I abstain or vote?
Were you were here for the public hearings, though, weren't you? Yes. Yeah, then you should vote. I was getting nods from staff behind you, so I felt comfortable making that call. And the motion passes unanimously. Okay, moving on. Any changes to the agenda, Ms. Chow?
Good evening, Chairman Rossler. No changes tonight. Thank you.
Very good. The next item on our agenda is oral communications. This is a time that the Commission sets aside to hear from members of the public on items that are not on the agenda. I have no speaker slips tonight at all, so is there anyone that would like to address the Commission? If not, we will move on to our first public hearing. Again, on our public hearings, if you wish to address the Commission, you need to fill out a speaker slip. They're out in the hallway, and you give them to Ms. Chow at the end of the dais here. Our first public hearing is an amendment to the Biological Preserve Overlay. Mr. Connolly, your staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This is an amendment to Chapter 1815 of the Development Code, the Biological Preserve Overlay Zone. It was established in 2012 with the adoption of our general plan update and the associated zoning map that went with that. The intent of the Biological Preserve Overlay, what we call the BPO, was to protect sensitive biological habitat within the city in accordance with the Multiple Habitat Conservation Plan, which was a regional plan approved by SANDAG in the early 90s. The BPO is essentially established to protect those lands, so it limits land uses, really limited to parks, trails, and essential utilities. Because unauthorized use of some of these areas seems to be increasing with some of the problems we're having around town, and these impacts are damaging the habitat and water quality in these areas, the staff is recommending some changes to the zone. The BPO is shown here. It really covers, on the right side is the map that shows the city of Vista and the locations within which it covers. On the left is the MHCP, which is the regional document. I just wanted to give you an indication of what was anticipated in the early 90s in terms of preservation, and then what ultimately ended up being preserved in our Biological Preserve Overlay. It covers about 296 acres. All of the properties that are covered by it are currently city-owned or controlled properties controlled by conservation easements. So the three areas are near the sports park in the north part of the city, along Buena Vista Creek behind the BMW dealership in the western portion of the city, and then Buena Vista Park and La Mirada Canyon in the southern portion of the city. And again, these are all city-owned properties or controlled by easement. The proposed project would amend the overlay zone in these areas to further limit the specified activities. Those include assembly or construction of any kind of shelter or sanitation device, removal of earth or vegetation, raising or capturing any biological material or wildlife, human waste, cooking systems, causing any type of illegal discharge to surface waters, and finally, use or occupation of any structure or improvements of any kind in these areas. This proposal would be consistent with our general plan goals to protect our open space, maintain biological diversity, protect water quality. That's all included in the resolution that's before you this evening. These amendments to the code require a recommendation from the Commission to the City Council, and so the staff is recommending that the Planning Commission make a recommendation to the Council to amend Chapter 1815 as presented. And I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Very well. Any questions of Mr. Conley? Commissioner Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Conley, can you put back your slide that talked about one before that or after that one? How is all of this going to be transmitted? Is there going to be signages in all these areas saying this is a biological preserve and you can't do these things? Is it going to be patrolled by a ranger? How is it enforced?
It would be enforced by the Sheriff's Department in terms of just our normal enforcement of our open space and city-owned lands. We will probably sign it heavily or more heavily once the ordinance is approved, but it's not a requirement of this action. The intent is just to provide the Sheriff's Department some more enforcement authority for maintaining, open areas in these locations.
So they know that they will have to drive by, walk the area periodically just to make sure everything's cool?
Yeah, the idea really is more when there are problems, we have some more enforcement authority if we need it.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions at this time.
Commissioner Looney?
That's the same question.
Okay. Commissioner Jackal?
Same question, except I also wondered if the deputies find someone doing any of these things, are they subject to arrest or?
Yeah, most likely, if depending upon the circumstance, they might be asked to leave. They can be issued a citation. So that would be, and they might be required to appear in the event that, a citation were issued. It would really depend upon the nature of the violation. I think simply being present out of the hours, would be less serious than, let's say, building and occupying a structure and doing other kinds of activities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That concludes the staff report and commission's questions. This is a public hearing. I have no speaker slips for the item. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission on the biological preserve overlay zone? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and open it up to the commissioner discussion. Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there is no discussion by the Planning Commission, I make the recommendation to adopt the resolution as stated.
Very good. Commissioner Garrison?
I would second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the amendment as presented, or make a recommendation to the City Council to approve the amendment. Please cast your vote. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on our agenda are discussion items. They are not public hearings, but we will take public testimony, but we will not take an action. They are early design review items. Very good. And staff will make a presentation on the project. The applicant will make a presentation. There'll be a discussion by the commission, and then we will provide input on a variety of design aspects of the project. So the first item for early design review is for apartment project, site development plan for 22-unit apartment project at 1529 and 1541 North Santa Fe. Mr. Winters, your staff report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Rossler and Commissioners. This is planning case P18-0380, Kunzik Ruiz, applicants for the apartment complex. Purpose of the EDR is to provide an opportunity for the Planning Commission to review initial proposal and give preliminary advisory comments to the applicant. The proposal has not been routed or fully reviewed by city staff. It's only reviewed in terms of basic zoning compliance. The applicant will answer specific questions about the project design and the thought process behind the initial proposal. No formal vote or action is required or necessary for an EDR item. This is a preliminary proposal to develop a 22-unit, 3-story apartment building on a 0.55-acre site. It's located on the east side of North Santa Fe Avenue, approximately 350 feet north of Bovier Drive. The site consists of 2 adjacent parcels. Each is currently developed with a single-family residence. Proposed site improvements include 1 building with the first-floor garage, apartments on the second and third floors, perimeter landscaping, private and common deck areas. The red area in the middle of the slide shows the project site. Surrounding land uses included single-family residential to the east and to the west and to the north. There are multifamily projects a little farther to the north on North Santa Fe Avenue. There's 4 units were shown just to the left behind Walgreens, and then you have commercial development at the intersection of Bovier. General plan and zoning designations for the surrounding properties and the subject property. Commercial areas are neighborhood commercial under the general plan, C1 zoned, and the zoning is consistent with mixed-use general plan designation at 40 units per acre maximum density. To the east is medium density residential, R1B zoning, single family residences. This is a project site looked at from an aerial view. The first one on the left is looking from above Santa Fe towards Manor Drive, and on the right would be from above the site, somewhat above Manor Drive, looking towards North Santa Fe Avenue. The project would require a site development plan review by the Planning Commission. As mentioned, it's 1 3-story building with a ground floor parking garage. There would be 10 one-bedroom units and 12 two-bedroom units with sizes ranging from 730 to 888 square feet. The proposed density is 40 dwelling units per acre, which is the maximum per the general plan and zoning. The height is 3 stories at 32 feet 3 inches proposed. Residential parking, there's 40 spaces required based on the number of units and bedrooms, and there's 40 provided in the plan. Open space requirement is just over 3,000 square feet. The project provides 6,240 square feet of common landscape area and a total of 7,300 square feet of private and common deck areas. This slide shows the site plan with the perimeter landscaping. There's 5 open parking spaces at the front near the entrance to the project. 35 parking spaces are in the first floor garage. There's an elevator at the front entrance of the building. This slide shows the second and third floor plans. There's basically 1-bedroom units at the end of each side of the building with design B as the center units and unit D, which is in the central area. C would be at the upper right, if you've looked at those plans already. This slide shows the unit floor plans for A, B, and C. They've been left somewhat in this configuration to be consistent with what's on the floor plans that were shown in the previous slide. This slide shows the project's architecture, this would be the east elevation facing North Santa Fe Avenue, where you would have the first floor garage entrances and a access to the elevator and trash enclosure. This is the west elevation, the rear of the project, which would face Manor Drive, which appears on an aerial image to look as like an alleyway, but it's a public right-of-way. Next slide shows the north and south elevations, along with a cut view through the central courtyard area. This slide shows the project materials. The wood horizontal features is Ipe wood. The two stucco colors proposed are fireplace mantle and sandstone palette. Staff requests that the Planning Commission provide comments to the applicant related to the proposed design of the project. There's also two additional slides, if helpful, that show an enlarged view of the floor plans adjacent to some of the unit designs. That concludes staff's presentation.
Is the applicant here, and do they have a presentation?
I believe Fausto Ruiz was coming to the meeting, and Whitfield Architects should be representing.
Looks like people are rising.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Rudy Della O, Whitfield Associates. We're the architecture firm for the group. Address is 24691 Del Prado, Suite 201, Dana Point, California, 92629.
Okay.
Also have Caitlin Levchuk with the same address.
When you're finished, would you fill out one of our speaker slips and
I
hand it in?
apologize. I didn't know as the applicant we needed to do that, but we certainly
Yep.
will. Okay. And then we also have.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Fausto, and I'm the part owner of the apartments. And yeah, we're here to hear your comments on the proposal.
Okay, very good. Did you have comments to make on the project, or?
In general, we appreciate the opportunity to introduce the project in a very early stage. We don't have any supplemental presentation to make, but we thought we'd come here and avail ourselves to any comments that Commission might have.
Very good. Okay. Don't go away. Hang close, and we'll check with the commissioners. Are there questions of staff or the applicant? Commissioner Garrettson.
Yes, a question for staff. No amenities other than balcony space? Is there any required? I mean, I know they're in compliance with the amount of open space, but there are no amenities proposed whatsoever. Playground, parks, nothing.
None were identified, just the open landscape areas and the deck areas internal of the building.
That would be a concern of mine because there's nothing real close by.
I noted that on my list of comments also. When you come back, there are, based on the number of units, I believe, 2 full amenities.
It's one amenity required per the number of units.
So check with the ordinance, check with staff. You've got to provide some type of amenity. The choice is up to you. And then Commissioner Garrison, I also noted there wasn't a landscaping plan in the project. So you're gonna prepare a landscaping plan and submit it, and we reserve rights to comment on that since that you haven't made it part of the package. Okay.
Also, this doesn't seem compatible with the surrounding area. They're all single level, single family homes. So this doesn't seem, compatible with that side of Santa Fe, in my opinion.
Okay, Commissioner Looney.
Question for staff and for the applicant. So I'll go for the applicant first. On the site survey plan or preliminary grading plan, we've got shown 2 power poles. One's in the southwest corner and one is about in the middle of your two parcels on Manor Drive. Is there, has there been any consideration with SDG&E of removing those power poles, particularly the one on Santa Fe, and putting that service underground? Because I'm sure right now there's an easement that cuts across the southeast corner of your development. So I just didn't know if any preliminary work has been done with a planner at this point.
So if I have the time to respond, and I know that we just talked about 3 different things. We are evaluating amenities for the site. It's not out of our consideration. We know we need to provide it, and we've, I think, floated a few ideas. One maybe being a playground, another maybe being a community garden where folks that live and establish the community can have their chance to go down and participate in maybe having some agriculture for themselves to own and to cultivate. The other, in terms of the nature of the development, I think we're within the scope of the context and the scale of development of what the city envisions for the specific plan. So that to us was one of the motivating factors in terms of how we designed and kind of arranged the scale of development. And the third, we haven't quite engaged the utility company, and that's going to be our next step. A lot of times from our experiences, we're at a real preliminary stage, and the utilities want substance material things to evaluate, and we're just not there yet, but we're certainly going to look at those because that really affects not only the design, the aesthetic, but also the cost of the development. So we're just not there yet.
Okay.
It's a consideration that we do have on our mind. So.
Commissioner Looney, if I can chime in, undergrounding of the utilities would be required with the project development at the front and rear of the property.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So it answers itself there.
It does. Thank you. Another question for staff. On the site plans, along the east boundary line, sometimes it's referred to as an alley, sometimes it's referred to as Manor Drive. There's an access to that drive area from the lower level parking area. Will the city require street improvements for that drive? Again, I don't know if it's an alleyway or if it's a street. I noticed there is a street dedication or an alley dedication. Is that a potential area for parking?
I don't believe there's room for parking. There's a 20-foot right-of-way existing. Our Michael Ressler let me know that there's a 4-foot dedication that the fire department would be looking for to have adequate access with, and I believe that would preclude parking being available along that side of the project.
Okay. Is there any street dedication required on Santa Fe?
There is. It's a 100-foot right-of-way, and I believe there's from a 15 to 20-foot dedication that would be due.
So the curb and gutter and sidewalk would match what exists at the 7-Eleven at the main intersection?
I believe that's correct. I did not look at it in close detail, but when I took some rough measurements before the meeting, and I believe it would line up.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
But if you want me to, or if you need us to elaborate on that, I think if we went back to the site plan, we've accounted for the setbacks that you've brought up in terms of dedications and right-of-ways and things of that nature.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you. I know well, I agree with many of Mr. Garrettson's comments, and as far as the amenities go, I'm glad that you're thinking about them, especially if you plan for for children to be living here. They need to have a place to play. And I would just say, overall, I know the density is allowed, but it seems like the property is filled with building edge to edge. It seems terribly dense to me. That's how it feels.
Okay. Commissioner Kramer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I like what you've done, that the units are large. My only concern is on the actual layouts. You have an area that's called a home office, and my fear is the home office could be interpreted as another open bedroom, which would then mess up the parking and all of that. So that's my only concern. But thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Grimm?
Yes, Commissioner Looney mentioned the fact that there's going to be some access onto Manor Drive. I guess my question, I'm not sure really if it's for the applicant or for staff, but that at that point you're putting multiple family traffic into the backside of a single family area. And if you look up Manor, I guess that's to the north, there's other properties that look like they may develop in the future. Is that something that is being planned for, that more traffic is going to be put onto Manor Drive in the future? And that's probably a staff question rather than an applicant question.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. We do a preliminary review of the plans when it's coming through the process. I was not part of the pre-application meeting, but I'm not aware of a drive access at the rear of the project, so I would need to get a confirmation of that from the applicant.
It's my understanding that the project is not going to take access off of the alley.
That's correct.
And that their total access will be off of South Santa Fe or North Santa Fe. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if you look at the elevations, you will see what looks like it's essentially along the west elevation. Those are not doors. Those are fixed steel grills, allowing enough ventilation into the space. So the only vehicular access will be along the west elevation.
Okay, so you're closing the one driveway, then on the one lot, you're going to have one access in and one access out.
That is correct.
Okay, my mistake, sorry.
Very good. On that access, it appeared on the elevations like there was going to be a gate or a garage door, but I didn't see that on the site plan. Are you planning on having the garage gated?
It'll be a security steel roll-up sectional grill.
Okay. All right,
essentially.
very good. Okay. Commissioner Garrison, did you have an additional question?
Yes. On the alleyway, what kind of fencing would you anticipate there? Now, the fencing is kind of, as I recall, different types of fences depending on whose property abuts that alleyway. What kind of fencing would you have? I assume you'd replace what's there. So what are you proposing?
That is correct. We haven't, again, this will be part of the next submittal. However, security will be something that we'll look into when considering what kind of fence to put up. I don't believe there's much retaining that needs to take place. But again, something that'll be secure.
I would be concerned about the aesthetics of it, going
Yes,
down that alleyway,
that's
that it's an
correct.
improvement over what is there now.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bell.
Thank you. It looks like you've got decks on the second and third story, obviously, on both sides. I really like the interior design of them. I think for a project that you're trying to fit into a smaller acreage, having the decks on the outside but having the entryways at least offset from each other in the center of the building is a nice touch rather than just hallways. I mean, that's really a different design than what we've seen sometimes. The question is for the east elevation. There's concern from homeowners in the area that this is a three-story building going up next to their backyards. Have you looked at anything from the view perspective from the backyards of the lots? Is there any measurements or view diagrams taken to show how much of a view change this would be. It's hard to tell from the overlay just how drastic the three-story building would be compared to the house itself. So I guess the suggestion would be if you come back, having some kind of representation of what that view change might be would be helpful for all of us to make some judgments on that. But otherwise, I like the design of the decks.
Okay. I had a concern on that east elevation on both sides on the second and third story. It's a one-bedroom unit that's on that end, and there's very small, narrow windows. One of my concerns is security of the alley and having eyes on the alley. I would like to see better visual visibility, and then also lighting, how you're going to light that side of the building so there's visibility and security in the alley. I would like to see a definition. Right now you've got the deck area that Commissioner Bell talked about. I think it's great. I like it. But there's you need to, I think, define between public common open space and private open space. And so I'd like to see in your next submittal how you're going to deal with that. Talked about lighting on the alley. Oh, on the left-hand side of that elevation, there seems to be a trellis or a wood structure that hangs down. Can you tell me what that is?
The intent is that it would be something that plants could potentially even grow on.
Okay.
There's no, obviously, there's no openings into the parking structure from
Right.
that side, but again, you could potentially grow.
It's screening for that side of the parking level? Okay.
It would basically be if, well, there's no actual openings from the parking structure on that side, but I think the intent is just visually bringing that horizontal
Okay.
element down to balance the look, and also plantings could grow down it potentially.
Okay. All right. Very good. East elevation and on the alley on the ground floor, from the alley elevation, the east elevation, we have some pretty strong anti-graffiti requirements in the city, so you need to think about that also. Okay. Commissioner Jackal?
Thank you. Just one other question. Is there like a public doorway, a pedestrian access to the complex? I thought I saw one on the south elevation, but maybe not.
That is something that we'll need to include, is a public access from the
'cause
sidewalk.
There's no idea of how you get there, sort of, other than by car.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, that is a good point. So duly noted, and we'll be sure to address that in the next submittal.
All right. That seems to be the end of the commissioners' comments and questions. We will go through each one of the design aspects and get commissioners' comments. So, commissioners, regarding the site design and grading, any comments? Okay. The site design, I was surprised that you got 40 dwelling units per acre. That's what our zoning calls for, and I think you've got a fairly ingenious plan to achieve that density. It's usually pretty hard to do that. I would give you a heads up, though, that you're using the mixed-use parking standards, and so the commission in the past has had watched that very carefully. So I would recommend to you that to check closely with staff on your parking, okay, as part of the site design. Commissioner Looney.
One of the things that just to be mindful of is guest parking. We've got you've got 4 normal parking spaces and accessible parking spaces. So when guests do arrive with this number of units, just be mindful of where is a guest to park their vehicle when they do come and visit.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments on the architecture? Commissioner Jackal?
Sorry, really like the way you've arranged the units with the decks and that sort of thing. However, on the exterior, there seem to be a number of quite blank walls. And I wondered if there were a way either to enlarge the windows or provide some other kind of definition on those walls.
Okay. Commissioner Looney.
A couple of things. It's a great concept with a courtyard, basically courtyard concept. You've centered everything around basically that courtyard, somewhat addressing the things on the north and south elevations. The somewhat nondescript wall on the alleyway, I understand that. I don't have an issue with the heights. If we've got single-story homes on the east, if they've got an average 8-9 foot high wall height and with the roof, so you're going to be looking at 12 to 15 feet in height from the ground up to the ridge. And we'll be looking at another project across the street that's considerably higher than this one. So try to look, what I'm trying to do is look at the big picture when other developments are implemented and what that finished product is looking like. Have a little concerned on the home office, Plan C. If I was the architect, I would reduce the closet in that bedroom, put a doorway there, and then put another door over in that area that's accessible to the deck. It's real easy to put a second bedroom in there. And that would change the parking count. I would say in 98% of our meetings, parking is an issue. And so just be mindful of that. Color schemes, I think you've got a good start. I think it needs to be developed a little bit further. And then a comment on the trellis on that south elevation. I think it's a great concept. Being mindful of security, it's a great ladder to where I can get up to that second level. And it appears as though it's 4 feet or so off the ground. It's a great concept. It adds some delineation to the exterior, which is going to create some light and shadow, which is good. Just study that a little bit further. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Garrettson.
Yes. Is there parking on Santa Fe? When this is, now there is, but once this is developed, will there be parking on Santa Fe?
There would not be. Confirmed with the director.
Okay. Well, that eliminates some of their flexibility, especially visitor parking.
Okay, the next item on our list is landscaping and amenities. I think we've already told you, you need to have a landscaping plan, and you need to show us the amenities, so that we'll be looking forward to that. Any other comments on landscaping or amenities, commissioners? Okay. And then any other comments on the project overall? Okay, that seems to be the extent of our comments tonight. I would congratulate you. I think you've done a good job. Doing infill projects is always difficult, and I think you're off to a good start. Address our comments, and the next public hearing should go very easily. So, okay, any other comments?
Thank you. We'll fill out the card.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Very good. All right. We're going to switch out staff here and go to our next item. Excuse me. Which is another early design review in the same neighborhood at 1558 North Santa Fe Avenue. Mr. Rissler, when you're ready we're ready for your staff report when you are.
For the North Santa Fe Plaza Apartment Project, application number is P18-0341. Chris previously went over the purpose of the EDR, so I won't be going through that again. Staff has received a preliminary proposal to develop 25 apartment units as well as a 690 square foot coffee shop on approximately 0.65 acres. The site is located on the west side of North Santa Fe Avenue, north of Beaubier Drive, and the site is currently vacant land. Here's an aerial photograph of the site as well as photographs. Again, the site is 0.65 acres, 2 legal lots, irregular shaped, and again, vacant land. Surrounding land uses include a single-family home to the north, a Walgreens pharmacy to the south. Across North Santa Fe Avenue, we've got single-family homes. Actually, the parcel that was before you in your first early design review, as well as single-family homes to the west. The general plan land use designation for this project, as well as the surrounding properties, is mixed use, which allows for up to 40 dwelling units per acre, as well as allows for commercial land uses. Zoning for the site would be mixed use MU40 with a North Santa Fe overlay zone, which allows for up to 4 stories and a maximum density of 40 dwelling units per acre. The project would require a site development plan, CEQA review, as well as landscape review. The project includes 25 apartment units within one 4-story building, a 690 square foot 1-story coffee shop. The apartment project would have a maximum or have a density of 38.5 dwelling units per acre. The ground level parking would be provided on the first floor of the building, 4-story building. The unit makeup would be 9 studio units, 6 one-bedroom units, and 10 two-bedroom units. Staff is identified that the applicant is proposing 2 affordable units via the density bonus ordinance that we have for the city. However, they're not asking for an additional increase in density. They're only asking for a development standard concession. Again, the site's 0.65 acres. The submitted site plan indicates 1 4-story apartment building on the northerly portion of the site, as well as a 1-story coffee shop on the southerly portion of the site. In terms of site amenities, the apartment project would provide for a barbecue area, a tot lot, and additional open space opportunities. In regards to parking, city code would require a total of 45 parking spaces. The submitted site plan indicates a total of 38 parking spaces. The applicant is requesting that the proposed project be parked pursuant to State Government Code Section 65915 P1B, which would require 1 parking space per 1-bedroom unit, 2 parking spaces for 2-bedroom units for affordable projects and density bonus projects. With that, based on the unit configuration, the code would, or the state government code would require a total of 35 parking spaces. So with the 38 provided, they would exceed that standard by 3. Architecturally, the proposed building would maintain a stucco exterior finish, would maintain articulating walls, tower elements, arched openings, balconies with wrought iron. Other enhancements would include canvas awnings as well as a brick stone veneer on the base of the building. Here's a perspective of the project looking southwest from North Santa Fe Avenue, which highlights the tower elements as well as some of the other architectural features. In terms of the floor plan, the proposed project units would range in size from 510 square feet studio unit to 996 square foot 2-story units. Staff is requesting that the Planning Commission provide comment to the applicant. The applicant, as well as the project architect, is here to answer any questions you might have, and staff is available to answer any questions you might have as well. Thank you.
Does the applicant have a presentation?
The applicant will not have a presentation. However, they'd like to introduce themselves and be available for questions.
Very good.
Yes, my name is Peter Chu. I'm the architect of the project, and the owners group, Amber, Ty, and Tony, are also there available for questions. I really appreciate the opportunity. The commissioner will give us this opportunity to present our project by the good planner here and give us a very good comment. I really appreciate it. My name is Peter Chu. Again, I'm the architect. I reside in 38746 Boathouse Drive, Marietta. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chu. Commissioners, any questions of staff or the applicant? Commissioner Looney.
Question for staff. And I know this hasn't been reviewed by really any of the departments, but will the city require street improvements on Champa Street?
That's a good question. I actually spoke to our land development division before we came in tonight. Champa Drive is actually a private driveway. City staff has not confirmed that they actually have access rights to Champa Drive. So ultimately, that'll be something that we'll have to research after tonight. So I don't have an answer for that. However, if they do have the ability to access Champa Drive, they would require curb and gutter along the edge of that private driveway.
Okay. Are the parcels going to remain as individual parcels? Are they going to be doing a boundary adjustment?
They would be required to consolidate them.
Okay. That's all for staff. Thank you.
Commissioner Grimm.
Yes, the applicant mentions, I guess specifically, or at least in the staff report, that 690 square foot building would be a coffee shop. If a coffee shop's not viable, I assume there's other uses that would be that could be utilized there. And is it general commercial, or is it narrowed down through an area plan?
Yeah, you know what? Our mixed-use zone has a variety of commercial retail type uses that are comparable and compatible with mixed-use development. So light retail, non-intense uses are identified within that section.
Commissioner Kramer.
Just a little clarification on the parking. So I see that there's some parking for the coffee shop. That is not included, I'm guessing, into the complete unit parking?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So there are
Can I add on to that? For the commercial retail space, the city requirements every 200 square feet per parking. I do provide 3 spaces at the bottom of the triangular lot for the retail space. as the coffee shop. So I do have 3 parkings right next to the small coffee shop for the commercial parking.
Thank you.
Commissioner Looney.
Will the parking adjacent to the coffee shop be accessible by the residents from the
Yes.
apartment?
Yeah, there's a pedestrian, if you see on the site plan, on that green stripe, right next to that green landscape bell, there will be a like 4 feet wide pedestrian connecting the coffee shop to the residential apartment building.
But if I was a resident in the apartment, could I park in the coffee shop parking lot?
Yes, I think eventually there will be some numbers or designation for commercial parking and residential parking. Since at the next to the coffee shop, we have total 6 parking. So there are 3 parkings for residential use and 3 parking for the commercial use.
Okay. Parking may become an issue because if the residents are going to be using the parking of the coffee shop and there's no street parking, customers may have to park in the adjacent commercial lot to...
Yeah, I understand. But for the citywide parking requirement, there are only 3 parking required for this small retail space.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Garrettson.
That was my question concerning that combined parking.
Okay.
But I think eventually the owner and the management team can assign maybe 2 or 1 of the small units, studio units on the 2nd floor. They maybe have to park right next to the retail building. It is because of the tightness of the irregular shaped lot. It is very difficult to provide all the parking on the large parcel.
Commissioner Bell.
Question for the city. If these 2 structures were taken as completely separate projects under this same zone, would there be any change to the regulation or requirements here, or does one benefit the other because they're being presented as one project?
No, because in the mixed-use zone,
Yeah.
the commercial component would have to park itself. So there's really, I don't think, any benefit of them going together or separately. I guess it's a benefit for the housing development that if the commercial parking isn't being used, it could be used for overflow during business hours or non.
But from a requirement perspective, and this is thinking back to a year ago when we were dealing with this mixed use, there's no requirement that this mixed-use zone have commercial or retail built into the project?
No,
it's just the zone itself is for mixed use.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Any more questions of the applicant or staff? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chu.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We've had the questions for the applicant. Are there any members of the public here that wish to address this early design review? I do not have any speaker slips for it. All right, so we will move on to our commissioner comments. And the first one is, as always, site design and grading. Any comments from the commissioners on the site design and grading? Okay, I will start it off. This is a weak first attempt in my view. There isn't enough information on this site plan and site design. The driveways and the parking need to be further defined. It looks like part of the driveway is the edge of the building, and that's not going to work. So I think we need to have more definition as to exactly where things are going and how they're going to be laid out. So, Commissioner Looney?
Similar comments. The graphic presentation is lacking. The drawings are hard to understand. And I think there's some good elements to what you've proposed. but they're hard to see.
Mhm.
I think there's some issues with the covered open space area. How is that going to be used?
Right.
We've got open space, but give us
Right.
give us an idea of how it's going to be used.
That area, we will putting some, since that area has been defined for tot lot, so we might be putting some small kids playground with like a small merry-go-round, some kind of object there for the kids to utilize that area.
Well, I think that's maybe a good start, but there's quite a bit of square footage there.
Right.
That I think could be better utilized than just a tot lot area. If you could clarify access to that open space area, because just to the south, we've got a stair feature, we have an elevator feature, and because of the single lines on the graphics, it's hard to determine what is a wall and what is a fence.
Yeah,
so if you
thank
could just, I think, enhance the graphics, that would be a great improvement. Some of your circulation for emergency equipment might be problematic on how we get a fire truck in there. Also, emergency access to that coffee shop. Those are some of the things that I see. From an engineering standpoint, research the bioretention basins.
Yes.
Those take a lot of space. And we've got one little area over by the south of the coffee shop designated as bio space, but it's going to require more than what you've got. And what we're finding now is the requirements for those retention basins oftentimes will dictate the layout of your building and the lot coverage of that building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I have for the site right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Additional comment on the site design and the layout of the open space on the main deck. It appears that a portion of it is open to the sky, but yet another fairly significant portion of it is covered. So we're going to need to understand how all of that's going to work. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
The idea is having that courtyard, atrium courtyard on the second floor, so the tenant can gather over there, and the kids can stay there. So a little bit of sense of community, and that's open to the sky in the area that's covered by the third floor building. That would be a little more private, a little shaded under the second floor structure.
I noticed
a little
you
change of
indicated
the
that
pace.
There might be a barbecue there. Sometimes I burn my dinner, and all that smoke is going to be trapped in your atrium. So I think you should think about that also.
Okay.
Commissioner Garrettson?
Yes, I'd like to see some sort of a perspective from the adjoining properties. You know, what it's going to look like. You know, these properties are single-family homes. So I would just some perspective on that, some artist's perspective when you return. You know, what that's going to look like to the neighbors from across the street, et cetera, from Santa Fe, from Champus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our design idea is trying to comply with the design guideline by breaking the building mass into different elements by the different design of the roof shapes, hip roof, gable roof, and shed. And also the building, we have the in and out to provide some facade articulation. So for the neighbor's point of perspective, you would not see this as a big 4-story building because of the architecture design we are providing.
I would just ask you show us and show the neighbors. You know what? I mean, I know you've put this, but what's it going to look like from each one of the different angles?
I see.
From the perspective, because these neighbors have been here a while, and we owe it to them to show what they're going to be looking at, besides just a 3D drawing or a one-dimensional drawing.
I see.
Any other comments on site design? Next area is architecture. Commissioner Looney?
Addressing Mr. Garrison's comments, the west and south elevations are somewhat void of fenestration. They are somewhat flat. Yes, you've got a little bit of roof structure at that upper floor, but there needs to be greater articulation on the west and south elevations. I think what you've done out the street side on that northeast elevation, where you've stair-stepped the building,
Right.
that's a good start because that's our streetscape.
Right.
Yeah. But we're lacking that articulation on the west and on that south elevation.
I understand. Yeah, I think up to now, all we do on the west and south, we are trying to recess that. If you see the second floor and third floor plan, we're just trying to recess the one bedroom units and creating balconies. And also on the south, we just recess that gym. We recess that gym and storage and creating the facade articulation. And thank you for recommendation. We will be doing more in the next phase for the facade articulation along the west side and south side.
Your graphics are lacking where they're not showing us what you've just described.
Yeah.
So the graphics are very important.
I understand.
Because this is all that we have to respond to.
Right.
And the more you provide,
right,
the more we can help you articulate some things.
Definitely, we are putting more emphasis on the street view. That is the north side and the south and the east side. Trying to provide different roof shapes, different colors of the facade, and creating more visual interest along the street.
One of the other items that I'd like to see clarified are the towers. We've got a 4-story, but yet we've got another 12 to 15 feet of structure above the ceiling of the 4th floor.
Right.
So how are those spaces going to be used, if any, or are they just eyewash to create more mass on the exterior?
Yeah, let me answer that. On the Green Tower, that is the top portion of the Green Tower. That's the elevator shaft, and the stairway. Because the stairway will have to lead you to the roof. There will be a solar panel. There will be AC units there. So that's the on top of the 4-story. That's the purpose of that tower. On the yellow tower. The yellow tower is on top of the 4th floor 1-bedroom, and so on top of that, it's just a fake wall to make the building appearance better at the corner.
Okay. All of the exteriors, from my perspective, need to be more carefully delineated, and I would like to see something that has a little bit more of a common theme, because right now we've got 4 different styles on one building. We've got some contemporary, we've got some Mediterranean, we've got a little bit of Southwest, and we've got some modern. There needs, on the next submittal, if we can begin to pull those themes and better define them as to maybe 1 rather than 4, I think your presentation and your application will go much further with this committee if you've got those elements in place.
Thank you. Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Looney. I had the same comments. Your south elevation is going to be visible from people driving north on North Santa Fe. You have to have fenestration, you have to have offsets, you have to have the detail that you provided on the north and on the east and north elevations. So, and yeah, the south and west elevations appear to be just a large stucco wall with color changes in it, and you're going to have to address that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on architecture? Okay. How about parking and traffic? One quick question I had on the parking, the elevations seem to show a garage door, and yet the site plan and the parking plan didn't indicate whether there were going to be garage doors. Yes or no on garage door?
Tony, can you answer that question about whether we will be using garage door or not?
Good evening, Commissioners. Tony Khalil, one of the owners, 8585 La Jolla Shores Drive, La Jolla, California, 92037. We will be considering steel roll-up doors for the garage entrance with gated cards for entrance and exits, just for security purposes.
Okay, very good. Right. Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you. On parking, looking at the driveway entrance from Santa Fe, it looks to me as though there are 4 parking spaces right off that driveway, so that if you're in your car, you're backing out, you'd be backing into the driveway. And I don't know how that works.
Especially the one space that's at an angle parallel to North Santa Fe. Back out of there and the driveway's blocked. So
Right.
Initially, when they came in, when we did the pre-application meeting with them, they had stalls, I think where the tot lot is, backing into the drive aisle as well. So we had them remove that before they submitted for the EDR. So that was a concern of staff's as well when we initially looked at this at the pre-app.
Okay. Any other questions, Stephanie? Okay. Commissioner Grimm?
I think it's, excuse me, I think it's always good when we're trying to provide a lot of housing, affordable housing. I guess my concern, and it's just, I guess from my experience from other areas, is just there's a large number of studio apartments here, and it's just been my experience that relative to parking, it can create a lot of difficulties over time. So I just think that with the number of one-bedroom makes it difficult. I think there's 19 total out of the whole number is either one bedroom or studio. I have a little bit of difficulty with that because of its relationship to parking.
Okay. And as I stated earlier in my question and comment period, you really need to define how the driveways are going to work in relationship to the building. Putting them right adjacent to the building wall, you'll have people running into your building. So, all right. Any other questions on parking and traffic? All right. And the last category is landscaping and amenities. And you'll just, well, Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you. I'm very glad that you have considered and provided some amenities. I too wonder what that open space area is going to be used for. I wondered if you plan to have the tot lot fenced.
Yeah, we will have fence.
Okay.
Yeah. Although it's not showing on the 3D perspective, but there will be iron fence, a low fence to protect the tot lot.
Okay. And then there is no landscaping plan, and there seems to be very minimal landscaping proposed. We really would like to see more about that when you come back.
Right.
Okay, let me go through my list one more time. Divine space. You've provided us a cross-section through the building, and that's very helpful in understanding how the building works. It might be helpful for us to understand the relationship to adjacent uses if you extended that out to adjacent structures for us. And I would be looking for alley improvements on campus if you have access to it. And then, okay, that completes my list. And hey, Commissioners, how did you feel about the coffee shop architecture? We didn't discuss that. I thought it's a square box with awnings, and you need to think about that a bit more. Okay?
Yeah, we would do more facade articulation for the coffee shop. Just as, the same thing will happen to our 25 units apartment.
Okay. Commissioner Bell?
Just to add on the coffee shop issue, I would just consider that the coffee shop may not work there. It may very well work there with the new apartments going in. There's going to be some foot traffic, and I hope that does great. But make sure you build out for other options within, whether it's small retail, restaurants, whatever it is. Just leave yourself some wiggle room with even the design on the outside to adjust as needed. Obviously, you can't put a drive-through. It's not going to be a big fast food restaurant or anything. But just be aware that a coffee shop may not be the final product, and give yourself some room to make it look good for another use if that happens to be the case.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Okay. That's the end of our design review.
Commissioner Rossler, noticing the comments that were provided tonight in terms of architecture and open space and the amount of comments tonight, I'm wondering if this project you might not want to see again at an early design review, see the improvements, maybe more detail, get a little bit more comfortable with it, because I think at that time that probably provides the applicant a little bit more direction and comfort level moving forward through the entitlement process.
I think that's a very good idea, Mr. Ressler. Hate to lengthen out the process for you, but the amount of information you provided us tonight isn't up to our usual standards. And so if you come back with another submittal, address the issues that the Commission has raised tonight, when you come back for your public hearing, it should go much easier for you. So I think that's a great idea. So any other comments?
Chairman Rossler, I have a question.
Sure.
Just to clarify your last comments regarding the cross-sections, did you mean to require a cross-section or suggest a cross-section across adjacent parcels?
Just the adjacent uses, whatever the adjacent structure is on either side, so we can get a handle on the difference in height and their location to your property line.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That concludes this early design review of this project. We have one more discussion item, but I think we will take a 5-minute break. If the students from Rancho want to bring their forms up, we will sign those and get you on your way this evening, and then we'll come back and have a discussion about South Santa Fe.
Good. How you doing? Good.
All right, are we ready to get back underway? Mr. Connolly, your staff report on our discussion item on the Paseo Santa Fe Planning District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The Commission recently reviewed a couple of early design review projects in the South Santa Fe area that exceed the 40 units per acre density allowance in the specific plan. And as part of that, as part of those reviews, expressed some concern about the exceedance of the density. And so I wanted to bring forward an item tonight just to talk about density in that corridor as an issue, kind of understand the vision for the area from the perspective of the Commission, and then look at whether any potential changes to the specific plan are merited and move that forward. So just to give you a real brief summary, the Paseo Santa Fe Planning District was the area that we're looking at. It's a 40 dwelling unit per acre maximum density. It can be exceeded with a special use permit, has a 60-foot height limit, and 0 setbacks with the exception of the rear where there's a 15-foot setback. This is probably the maximum building envelope provided in any zone in the city. This is a map of the specific plan area. The Paseo Santa Fe corridor is what we're focusing on. That's the yellow area, which pretty much stretches from Ocean View Drive on the north to Palo Vista and Civic Center Drive on the south. It includes the area where Paseo Santa Fe is being constructed, as well as Mercantile, a side street that parallels Santa Fe. The primary issue with respect to the density issue is the calculation and how it's calculated. So I've mentioned before, it's in past meetings, we had some projects that were brought forward that relied on a gross acreage number rather than a net acreage number. Density is determined as a function of units per acre, so that the amount of acreage that's included in that calculation has a real effect in how the density is determined. The gross lot size is everything, inclusive of any street dedication, so lot lines can stretch way out into a street and include large areas of the site that are actually encumbered by the street and all the public improvements. The net lot size, as defined in the city's code, excludes those public street dedications or access easements. And so when we do a subdivision, for example, we measure the lot size in the final finished subdivision on the net size of the lot because it excludes all the street dedications and other public improvements that might otherwise be required. However, the general plan allows us to calculate density based on gross lot size. That's just the way that the policies are written at the time that the general plan was adopted, and so we've used that tool, if you want to call it that, to bring projects forward. So I wanted to kind of run through some examples of how this has worked. The first example that's mentioned in the staff report is the North Santa Fe apartment project. This is the development that went right across the street from the Vista Transit Center. It was built by CHW a few years ago, approved in 2013. This is the actual slide that was in the presentation of the Commission at the time that the project was brought forward to discuss the project site. You can note that the project site is 2.29 acres. That's the gross lot size, but it includes a large area of the street. And I'll show you on the right is the parcel map that was ultimately approved for this project after it was entitled. So the orange area shows the gross lot size. The red area shows the net lot size. So you can see there were some large areas of North Santa Fe that were included in the lot size calculation because when those lots were created, they did not include the street dedication. So later, after the project was approved and they had to clean up all the lot lines and adjust the dedication, we came back and adopted this map, which clears up the issue and creates a net lot, but we allowed the project to move forward based on the gross lot size. So again, it kind of skews the density calculation. Another example is 100 Main Street. This is the other project example I provided in the staff report. On the left is the lot configuration that remained at the time that the lot was created. So when the streets were realigned and Jefferson Street was pushed up and Vista Village was created, there were all these sort of funky little old lots that were left with an alley that went down the middle. And that is the lot, that is the property, I should say, that was included in the development agreement with Streetlights Residential when it went before the council. So it referenced the entire size of the lot, which was 3-point-something acres. What we ended up with after we adjusted all the dedication, that's the ultimate, that's the gross lot and then in the red is the net lot. So you can see the gross was 3.16 acres, the net was 1.23 acres. The reason this was done is because in the old configuration, all of those old lot lines included parcel lines out into the street. When we adjusted the street and moved the roadway around, we never went back and changed those parcel lines. So it included a large area of the street that was later brought back and dedicated. And so the map on the right is what was ultimately adopted. Now it's a 1.23 acre lot that the building will sit on, but we use the gross density calculation in the approval of the project to meet the 40 units per acre. So, and again, this is the slide that came straight out of the staff presentation when 100 Main Street was brought forward. We clarified it was gross versus net, but we never got into the real details of that, and that's sort of what created the problem of allowing for these higher density projects that were seen as 40 units to the acre, when really, in fact, when you get down to their net lot size, they're much more dense. So, in summary, the North Santa Fe project, when we use our gross lot size, has a density of about 30 units to the acre. The net lot size, it's over 40. For 100 Main Street, we use the gross, it's just under 40. We use the net, it's almost at 100 units per acre. But what that shows is these projects that have surface area that, let's say, are going to have surface parking are going to be at a lower density, but it may not necessarily be what we envision for that corridor in terms of high density development, underground parking, ground floor commercial, the types of amenities that we're really seeking in that corridor. So I wanted to just kind of clarify that that's an issue that's come up. The two projects that we looked at recently were the Terrace Lofts, which is at the corner of Terrace and Santa Fe, and across the street, the Paseo Artist Village at the corner of Guajome and Santa Fe. Both of these projects fit within the building envelope of the specific plan. In other words, they're within the 60-foot height limit. They meet the setbacks. They fall within the area that's allowed, but they exceed the density. And as we've shown, these other projects that we've previously approved, the density can be exceeded with the building envelope that's provided. So these other projects, Terrace Lofts and Paseo Artist Village, they don't have street dedications to make, so they don't benefit from that gross lot size. They're going to have to exceed the density in order to get to that higher density urban feel that you're looking for on Santa Fe, if that's the vision for Santa Fe. So questions for the commission. Do you still believe in the vision for South Santa Fe of a high density urban environment? And if that's the case, the density that we're looking at for these projects that are coming forward in that corridor are going to be affected. Lower density favors projects with more land and surface parking. Higher density favors projects that are going to have underground parking and mixed uses and commercial ground floor like we see at 100 Main Street. So the building envelope is not proposing to change. What we're asking is, do you want to consider that density issue on a larger scale and possibly amend the general plan or the specific plan? Do you want to look at the development standards again? Or do we want to use the tool that we created for this issue, which is a special use permit? So the special use permit was introduced to accommodate the density exceedance in circumstances where we think it fits, where we think it's right, where we think it's okay because of the circumstances of the area it's in or what's surrounding it or what's driving it. And so, and those findings are included in the special use permit considerations that the Planning Commission makes. So the staff's recommendation is we should be using this tool within that corridor to evaluate those projects where we know the density is going to be higher than 40 units per acre, but we're making sure that it still is right. It has a nice street frontage. It provides the commercial frontage you're looking for. It has underground parking. It meets whatever standards you want it to meet. But the special use permit process provides you that additional discretion to go above and beyond the site plan requirements to put special considerations into a project that you want it to put into it to make it fit within the area it's proposed. So our options tonight are to maintain the existing standards within the specific plan and utilize the use permit process where it's warranted. We can clarify the use of net lot size in the calculation if that's desired, and it seems like that would be the desire of the commission to just be more straightforward. Our other option is to amend the general plan and downtown plan to change the density allowance and relook at that. Or our third option is to potentially modify the building envelope allowances that are in the current plan and reduce those to more match what 40 units per acre would allow for. So that's my staff presentation. I'm here to answer any questions and get your direction. If we can provide, or if the commission is interested in making changes to the plan, I would have to take something to the council on a discussion item, and then we'd come back with a formal change at a later date.
Very good. Everybody's reaching for their button. So, Commissioner Bell.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report, John. It's very, very helpful and extremely useful, I think, to see the net values here. I will speak for myself personally and my perspective on this, and I'm happy to hear other people's perspective. I asked for the net values because I understand the special use permit is a tool that allows us to make a lot by lot or project by project decision for a unique area of town. And I remember approving the earlier projects and knowing that there's a difference between gross and net, but it's really hard to compare apples to apples unless you have those numbers. I don't personally feel the need to change direction or amend any current plans to require the net be considered or to change any methods or procedures of how we view those things. I'm fine with a special use permit. I would just like that net number be acknowledged. And I'm perfectly happy to just take the stance of saying this is the way the code treats it, whether it's city, state, whatever it is. This is what we can or what we're allowed to decide under. Here's in addition what we're considering, knowing what the net will be, just so there's public disclosure and everyone's on the same page. And then that way we're able to compare and we can say, listen, 100 Main Street's obviously a big building and we know the density's high, but we chose that because that's the cornerstone of downtown. And so then the question is on a case-by-case basis as they come before us, are we going to choose similar paths for the projects in Paseo Santa Fe and the Artist District? And those will come before us one by one. But as for the method of choosing how to proceed with those, I'm fine with the special use as long as the net numbers are actually presented and both us and the public gets the option of looking at those and considering the comparison on those. And if you had asked me to guess, I would have guessed that the Artist Village was going to be less dense than the one across the street, but looking at the numbers, it's different. So it's just hard to tell from looking at maps and diagrams and layouts without looking at the actual square footage. So thank you for that.
Well said. Commissioner Grimm.
Yes, I'm not for giving it out automatically. I think the existing tool works great, and the project has to justify the use of the SUP. So.
Okay. Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I echo everything that Commissioner Bell said, and I like the use of the SUP because each lot, each project is different depending on the side of the street, depending on what's next door. I think that using the SUP and just knowing what those net and gross numbers are will handle everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Jackal.
Thank you. I agree with all of the above. I have maybe an off-the-wall question. I had heard at some point that having underground parking or below-ground parking was going to be difficult in this area because of a high water table. Did I make that up?
No, actually, that was a reason that the G8 project that preceded the Streetlights Residential project didn't move forward, is because they contended that the groundwater would make it too difficult to go deeper for additional underground parking, but we found that's not really the case. It's a cost consideration. There are pumps and certain requirements that have to be put in, but it's being done by the current developer.
Okay, so that's not going to get in the way of this then?
No.
Okay, great. Well, then I'm on board.
Commissioner Looney.
I think one of the things we need just to be aware of is, again, this parking issue. When we look at downtown near Pepper Tree, we've got pretty much all of central downtown district as accessory parking. But as we go further south, pretty much from the liquor store and Geib Lumber, we don't have the off-street parking. We've got that corridor of North Santa Fe, and that's all the parking that we've got that's off-site. And so I think we just, as we look at different projects, as they come before us, we just have to be mindful that we don't have that extra parking in that strip down to Civic Center that we have, at the north end. And I think that's may tie into, what we have with net area versus gross. And I know John and I have talked in years past about slopes. When they approved slopes on a piece of property,
Okay. Yes.
the hotel and condo complex off of Palomar Airport Road, we had a significant amount of slope, so the area couldn't be built upon, but yet the density was maintained. So I think we just need to take the time to look at each parcel and each project by project, to see what's going to be the best in the long term, and where are these people going to park in the daytime and in the nighttime. Yes, construction is expensive, land is expensive, but we're also defining the character of Vista. And I think we have to look long-term at that.
Just with regard to parking, I wanted to mention one thing. We do own the parcel at the corner of Mercantile and Guajome, which is just behind the Artist Village property where the contractor that's working on Paseo is staging right now. And we have considered that as future public parking.
See, that would be great.
So that's the current sort of tentative plan. We've never put any money into it. It's not been fully identified in the specific plan, but the city does own that land, and that at this point is the future plan for that land.
And Carlsbad has the same type of format. They've got downtown businesses, but they also have free downtown parking. And you really only need to go a block and a half, one direction or the other, and find city parking, which really helps the downtown district. So, thanks, John.
Commissioner Garrettson.
I would tend to agree with, doing it on a case-by-case basis, but there's certain comment that is made here on page 4. Exceedance of the maximum density is permissible with a special use permit. The process in place to allow a project to exceed the maximum density in situations where the project still fits the vision. That's something I think we have to do a better job when we're trying to do a special use permit, is to define what the vision is for that area so the public can understand. Also, compatibility with the surrounding area. That has to consider what the neighbors think. And, parking and traffic are major issues for the neighbors. And, it still meets the remainder of the applicable development standards. So I think as we're looking at a special use permit, we have to look bigger as we look at these special use permits. What is the vision and what is the compatibility with the neighbors? Because if you ask any person up here to define compatibility with the neighbors, you may get a different answer from everybody. So I think we have to do a better job of defining why that is compatible with that neighborhood.
The staff can put some of that into the presentations as well.
Okay, Grace, just a moment. We do have a request to speak from Reza? What do you think? Reza?
Hi, I'm Reza Tagari. I'm actually the owner of the property at 144 Camino Patricia. I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak. The special use permits conversation is kind of timely because with that unit that's on that property, it's currently a single unit sitting on a 7,300 square foot lot, which appears to be quite a large lot for a single unit. And our intent had developed to alleviate some of the housing shortage in the city of Vista, and at the same time improve and gentrify the project in a way that was, the neighborhood in a way that was aesthetically pleasing, and as you mentioned, would fit in with the current appearance of that neighborhood. The neighborhood, I believe, has a lot of potential. And as long as we introduce something that is aesthetically pleasing, I believe it would be a win-win. We would improve the housing shortage, we would gentrify the neighborhood, and also increase property values. We would also be able to add ADA housing, and if the city wanted to, we would also be able to incorporate low-income housing as well, and look to the future with additional amenities such as bike racks, barbecues, and so on, that the tenants might find welcoming. At the time, during the pre-application, the zoning permitted for up to 8 units in that area. We thought we'd go one below that, which would make parking a little bit easier and more doable, and also be more aesthetic and tasteful for that community. Unfortunately, during that time, when the original design was proposed, a modification was made which reduced the density allowable down to 3. I believe that we could possibly meet in the middle and propose a 5-unit into that area. And this is going to be very similar to what is already being done, has been done one street over on, I believe, 156 Terracina Way, where there's not only one, but actually 2 multi-unit dwellings, only one street across. We believe that the design that we proposed is even more aesthetically pleasing. It would have a much more welcoming, open architecture. The parking would be on the first floor, which would be easy access, and there would be ADA compliant housing on that very first floor, which would be very easy for the appropriate tenants to access. So did you want to, at every stage, we obviously want to consult with the city to make sure that we were compliant and that we listened to your requirements and your needs and your demands, and move forward in a way that was agreeable to you. Did you want to add anything?
So we met with Mr. Ressler just less than 2 weeks ago, and we've made some even adjustments after our meeting to make this the building less of a massing, so it would actually open up with 5 units. So we even have some renderings all set up. So it would just start to open up the space in the neighborhood. So it wouldn't be just a block, and we definitely want to have something that raises the value of the community and include as much as amenities as we possibly can on the site, and really increase the value and also blend with the identity of the neighborhood.
Part of what our thought process was to think forward. I know there's a lot of green planning that is kind of fashionable in mode right now. We'd like to basically incorporate some of that that would hopefully be incorporated in future construction.
Commissioners, you recall we reviewed the downtown specific plan a couple of months back, and we looked at Camino Patricia and thought it was a fairly stable-looking single-family neighborhood, and made recommendations to the council that we reduce the density. They got caught in that time period, and so my question for Mr. Conley is would the use permit process be applicable to this district within the downtown specific plan?
Yeah, they could still process a use permit to exceed the density in their district, and it would come to you through the early design review process, and you'd have an opportunity to look at it at that time.
Okay. All right. That's still below 10 dwelling units, so they won't come back here for
They wouldn't
public
normally
hearing.
come back here for a public hearing or approval unless it was appealed, but it would come through EDR.
Okay. So we'll get to see it and make comments on it. So, okay. Thank you very much. It sounds like we can cover you with the special use permit process. So
thank you so much.
Excuse me, Chairman Rossler.
Sure.
I believe with the special use permit, they have to come before you anyways.
That's true. Correct. Yeah. That's
welcome.
true. Thanks, Patsy.
We'll see you again.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
In my mind, Commissioners, we need to look at what, and it's been mentioned here, what the goal of South Santa Fe is. And if it's to have 4 stories in a mixed-use environment, then we need to do what we need to do to make that happen. That's the goal. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves, the council, and the community on what the densities are. And so using net densities as been discussed is, I think, key, and we need to have that information available.
Absolutely.
Sure. Commissioner Bell?
Thank you. One more question for staff. I think following up on other comments, is there someplace in the general plan or any other recent updates that we can look to give a more pointed goal of this district? Because I'm guessing I haven't done my homework and just seen that, but I think I just haven't looked at a document or guidance from anything that points to the south of downtown area as to how that would be different from downtown or the same as far as density and height. Is there...
The specific plan has some general descriptions of the Paseo corridor and what's being envisioned, and it really does speak to that kind of urban, higher density environment. So there's a description in there. What I will do, though, is the next time we update the plan, which I'm guessing we'll have to do here in the next few months for other issues, is to clarify that the net density calculation is what drives the the requirement for a use permit or a site development plan.
I guess I'm just not clear. Sorry to interrupt again. I'm just not clear on when, say, the two projects that came before us for EDR came before the commission here. Were those two projects brought in by the city and hunted down and encouraged by the city because of the design guidelines, or were these outside developers such as our speakers here that just came in and said, we want to redevelop a plot? I'm just not clear what the guiding factor is in the Paseo area, whether it's the city pushing forward or whether it's just people seeing bigger buildings being built and coming in and building on top of those.
That's a great question. It's actually both.
Okay.
So we do own land down there that we are processing with some affordable housing developers and using our housing money to build those projects. That's the Paseo Artist Village is an example of that. The project across the street is a private development that the developers just looking to try to maximize their investment. So it's a little bit of both, but the vision is really the same for both projects: high density, mixed use corridor in that area.
And I guess without being specific about those projects, as long as I know that there is some city guidance behind at least one or multiple projects down there to be a certain height, there's certain density, whatever that is, I feel better about looking at the other projects within the same range. I just didn't quite know if that was the overall direction or if this was just somebody coming in with a giant building and saying, we want to put here.
We're not chasing them down, but when they come in, we have that discussion with folks, absolutely.
If the city can include that when the bigger projects come in, especially with a special use permit, and give us some guidance that there is some related direction within the area, that would be helpful. Or if there's not, that would be helpful too, so we know that maybe this is a little abnormal. Thank you. I appreciate the work, John.
Grace, you had a comment. Come.
I was wondering if, to begin with, the densities were labeled as being calculated with gross or net land size?
So we didn't have any clarification of that to begin with.
Okay, because maybe that could be something we could require to begin with. But I also had a question regarding the parking as to whether it was supposed to be like a flat-out parking lot or a multiple levels parkade within the dense areas of the city.
So it can be either. There's just a minimum requirement for a number of spaces per unit, and that can either be in a garage fashion where it's stacked, or it can be flat. It depends on how many spaces they need and how much land they have to build it.
Okay, very good. Good questions. Any other comments, commissioners? Okay, very good. Mr. Connolly, you have enough direction?
Sufficient direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good discussion tonight. I'm glad. Seems like we're all on the same page here, so that's good. Any reports from other commissioners on Mr. Connolly, your report?
So we will not have a meeting on December 18th. I think I informed everybody of that before, so I hope everybody have a nice holiday. I think our next meeting will be January 15th. So we'll be sending packets out after the holiday season. Enjoy your time off. A couple of updates. We do have a new city council member that will be appointed on December 11th. John Aguilera was not successful in District 1 against a person who ran against him, Corina Contreras. So Ms. Contreras will be our new council member who will be seated next Tuesday. We do have some projects that are coming forward that are 10 units or less, smaller scale developments. Our code allows us to approve those projects at the zoning administrator level, which is at the staff level. These are all projects which have or would come before you for early design review first, but once they've done that and they've resubmitted and the staff is satisfied with the responses, we typically approve those at our level. We had a long discussion about whether or not these projects should be brought to the commission if they've come through EDR, but we determined that we should really just follow what's in the code. And so there are some of those projects that will be going forward through the zoning administrator approval process. I wanted to just alert you to that. When we do approve those projects, we send notice out to the Planning Commission and the City Council, and you as commissioners have an opportunity to appeal any of those projects so that you can hear them yourselves. So when you get that notice, it'll include a memo that describes the project and the appeal date. Pay attention to those, because if you look through it and you go, oh my God, you have the opportunity to appeal it and bring it to the commission. I just want to make sure you're clear on that. And we're going to have the same discussion with the council, but we'll see a few of those at the beginning of the year that are coming through the ZA. That's all I have, unless you have any questions on projects.
Any questions for Mr. Conley? Commissioner Garrettson?
Yeah, just a quick update on the roundabout on Mar Vista. I got the city newsletter notice, but I thought it would be worth mentioning here since it has been a kind of a big issue.
Yes, we do have KB Homes working on the project at the corner of Mar Vista and Santa Fe. They are required to build the roundabout. The condition was that they could not have any building final approvals until they completed the roundabout. We did let them go on their models, so they are going to be able to build their models and open those, but they won't have any production units until the roundabout's done. It's supposed to start December 17th, I believe, and it's going to take about 8 weeks to complete.
Very good. Any update on the gas station on the corner of East Vista Way and Wormlands?
It's on my list every time I sit down with the city manager, and unfortunately I'm not making any progress with the owner, so we're still working on it.
All right. And he's still racking up zoning code violations?
Yes, he is.
Okay. All right.
In the thousands now. It's an individual property owner, yeah, who owns a number of other gas station properties.
One question on the KB Homes. Does the city grant a certificate of occupancy on the model homes?
Yes, we do. We typically do that when the models are occupied by a tenant, though, or they're used after they're used for sales purposes. So we'll final the building and give them a temporary C of O, and then we'll give them a C of O at the time that all of the sales stuff is moved out and the unit's finaled for a tenant.
Okay, so that's what they've done on those models then?
Correct.
They've got a temporary.
Yeah, and sometimes they use the models with business offices, things like that. That all has to be taken out before we can final it. So we don't give a C of O typically until it's complete and tenants or occupants are moving in.
Okay, the project across the street, where the Chicago Title suite used to be, we looked at a project just to the north of that, and we were discussing possible realignment of entrance into that property via the light intersection.
Yes.
Has that progressed at all?
Yes, it has. They are, that's called the Cypress Edge project, the project at the corner of Cypress there you're referring to?
Yes.
They have redesigned to take access through the driveway. They're still in planning review, but they're working through the process, so they'll be in front of you here probably sometime next year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, John.
Very good. Any other comments? If not, we stand adjourned until January 15th, 2019. Merry Christmas to all.